Hello, and welcome to Champion Your Culture, the podcast where we dive deep into the heart of leadership and organizational culture. I'm Ryan McCarty.
And I'm George Rogers. Together, we're here to guide you on a journey of personal and professional growth. Every week, we bring you insights, stories, and strategies to help you and your company thrive in today's dynamic world.
So whether you're leading a team, running a business, or just eager to make a positive impact, you are in the right place. Let's jump right into today's show and champion a culture of purpose and passion. Welcome to Champion Your Culture. Hey, George, what's happening?
Good afternoon.
Yo, it is an afternoon. You're used to saying good morning because we used to go live in the morning. Off? Yeah, you were like, good afternoon. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it's been good, man. It's a good Monday. We had a long, crazy weekend.
Yeah, with the big All-Star game.
For you and your family.
NBA All-Stars. My wife is an NBA All-Star. So she was part of the NBA Foundation.
She's a winner. Yeah. You got to put that in there. She's a champion.
She didn't just compete in the NBA Foundation competition, but she pitched her app, Exhale app, and won the whole thing. She won $75,000. She won a lot of promotion. As a matter of fact, the app today, Apple made it the app of the day. So there's all kinds of cool stuff happening last couple
Shout
days.
to Qatar. Shout out to the whole team at Excel. Hey, all the Black and brown women out there, this app is for you.
Yes.
It was created during the pandemic. Because there was nothing out there of its kind.
You know, there's 20,000 mental health apps out there, and there were zero that were speaking directly to the Black experience, specifically to women. And so, Qatar has just made the thing that she needed.
Yeah.
And from that, you know, and listen, anytime you're an entrepreneur doing anything new, especially in a space that seems pretty crowded, 20,000 mental health apps.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, if it's not speaking directly to your experience, then that's not going to really give you what you need in terms of a resource. So we're real excited for Qatar. As a matter of fact, we're going to have her on the podcast next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So round of applause. Exhale and the team there.
Yeah.
Qatar, shout out. Man, I saw 50 Cent. 50 Cent was one of the judges. And he was like, I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to compete with it. This is the winner.
50 Cent was like, you look like you've been a CEO of a company for a long time. And she has. But that's when you're an entrepreneur, people don't see you as a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
But it really is. And you're putting your entire heart and your passion and your work behind something that has a mission and is meaningful. And so, thanks for bringing that up, man. I'm sure you had a great weekend too.
It was, man. I had a great experience. Got to take my kid out and, let him experience some of the All-Star stuff, the festivities. They had, places for autographs. So he got to meet a lot of people. Our good local homeboy, Lance Stevens, was in town playing a little pickleball.
Oh, really?
So him and Joakim Noah.
I joke that he's my favorite NBA player of all time.
Yeah. So it's always good there. We got to meet Zaire from the Indianapolis Colts linebacker.
Nice.
And a couple of NBA players, Sydney. Shout out to all of them. So he got to experience all this. He was
Dexter
excited.
Was loving that.
And then one of his favorite TikTok guys is Lee. He used to play college basketball. Okay. He's 6'9". Yeah. And his TikTok's all about him ducking underneath the door. And so people ask him, hey, go stand next to the shortest person in the world, or go stand next to this person.
Gotcha.
Kevin Hart, whoever. So he goes to all these people just to see the difference in their hand size and height.
Yeah.
And so he got to run into him. And then we topped it off. He's a fan of music.
Yeah.
And so I don't push anything because I'm the same way. I love a little bit of everything. I like some country. I like some rap. I love Johnny Blue Eyes. You know that he soothes the soul. I love Journey. So I got a little bit of mixed hip hop, obviously from where I was growing up, the old hip hop. I don't understand today's
new stuff.
Rap language stuff. And it's a little bit annoying, to be honest. But I don't discriminate or limit my kid. And so he loves Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll is awesome.
And dude, to see Dexter's passion. I showed you a video earlier. There's a couple of songs. It's like
he was screaming the words out.
I'm like, man, you feel like you gone through a heartbreak or something. Or you love something.
Yeah.
But if you know his story, there's a couple of songs that really almost caught my tears.
Yeah.
But I manned up.
Yeah,
that false narrative.
Nah.
I cried.
Yeah, you cried. You cried. You manned up and cried. That's what you did.
I manned up.
That's
and let
what
it go.
manning up means.
Let
when
it go.
when you actually man up, you start crying. You know.
Yeah.
So that's good. Hey, I'm excited about today's show. We're going to jump right in because the guest is a friend of mine. We met on the road.
Friend of ours.
Friend of ours. I'll say friend of
virtually met for the first
ours
time.
Night. Yeah, ours now. Any friend of mine is a friend of yours.
Hey, I've been friends with Dr. Shepard for a long time. He just didn't know it.
That's right. That's how everybody knows him. He's written a ton of over 100 books. Just when I think about someone that is interesting, not everybody's interesting to me.
Yeah.
He's one of those interesting humans that stands out to me. So we're not going to read any bio or anything. I just want to bring him right in. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right. Sweet. All right. And without further ado, Dr. Stephen Shepard, thank you for coming on. Hey.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. It's so great to have you. So
it's good to be here.
We've known each other for a while. I've been on your podcast recently, the Natural Curiosity Project, which if you've not been on that podcast, make sure you check that out. But I know you, George now knows you, but our audience does not. Tell us a little bit about what makes you tick, man. What are you about?
What am I about? Well, I've kind of spent my career in the tech world, right? I mean, like way too many people, but I think I can say this now as I edge toward this weird thing called retirement, that the technology itself kind of bores me to tears. Like I really don't care. I have to know it because of what I do. But what I'm really interested in is when technology strikes people, how do we use that? How do we create sparks there that do things like, create better healthcare, better education, more transparent government, opportunity, hope, economic growth, those kinds of things. Then it starts to get kind of cool. So, to say that I'm in the tech world, it's more like social technology or technological sociology, or I don't know.
The human side of like the rehumanizing tech.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, like this whole artificial intelligence thing, right? I mean, I tell people it's neither artificial nor is it intelligence. So let's give it a different name. Okay.
I love it. It's really not. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So it's like as we're evolving and technology is just it's perplexing to me how quickly things are evolving in terms of technology. And it doesn't look like there's going to be any slowdown at all with the surgence of AI and robotics and everything else. We're going to need more of what you're talking about, right? More of the human experience behind all of this.
Absolutely.
Because there's no stopping the advancement of technology, but there is the ability to stop the advancement of humanity. And so it's really, I think, important to take a step back and pause and say, how do we interact with all of this new technology in a way that gives us a better human experience? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And you mentioned the two concepts or elements, I guess, technology and humanity. And I mean, let's be very clear that, humanity is what created technology, not the other way around.
Yeah. Almost like we're recreating ourselves out of existence then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so we've got to be really careful to recognize that the role of technology is to enable humanity to be its best, to do the right things. And that's where the transparency comes in. It's where the enhanced capability comes in. If we can't do that, then we walk away. I mean, you pick a different technology.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. So we met out on the road. So you do a lot of keynote speaking and traveling. Talk about that world for you. And also just kind of, I know your overall messaging around technology and so forth, but throughout the year, you do a lot of traveling, man. You see a lot of things. I know the C word curiosity in your podcast. And the moment I met you, I don't think we got through one sentence before you said the word curiosity. So I've known that about you. And I love this idea. One of the values that I feel like I have is like wild curiosity, like just learning and hearing people's stories. But you do a lot of traveling and seeing the world. What does that look like for you on a year to year?
Well, until the zombie apocalypse descended upon us in early 2020, I was averaging probably 35 to 40 countries a year. A lot of it in the developing world, like a lot of it in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, working with organizations that are implementing technology for the very first time. And they would say things like, I have this much money. How do I get the most out of this investment? And so my job was to try to match that investment, not the investment so much as the capability that it engendered against the human goal, right? And if we could do that, I mean, now we win. Now it's not about the technology, it's about what it has catalyzed for people. And I've had that opportunity on more than one occasion to see what happens when a technology is implemented in a country for the very first time, when mobility first arrives or the internet first arrives. And you know, it's the craziest thing. You see the adults in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I remember this I was in a village way up in Limpopo province in northern South Africa, and the internet came. And I was on the ground when they flipped the switch and turned on the first router to bring Wi-Fi in. And the adults are all looking at it like, and within 4 minutes, the kids all had Facebook accounts and they're on Instagram and they're downloading music. I mean, it was awesome. Right. You know, it was just rings around the adults. It was great.
Yeah. I heard a story about a village where they dropped off a bunch of tablets. I'm sure you're familiar with this, and without any education at all. And within a short amount of time, you may have actually shared this story with me. I don't remember. It could have been during one of your keynotes for that matter. But just within such a short amount of time, the kids were just like you're talking about, just in it, almost broke right into the tablets and knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah. It's like really crazy, you know?
Kids and technology are crazy in general, just how they pick up their mind. And a lot of the technology, especially for Dexter, for instance, when we first got Dr. Stevens, so, you know, I adopted at the time he was 2 years old, my nephew who had lost his mom due to cancer when he was 2. And he didn't talk a lot.
Yeah.
He had a speech. And so we had him in speech classes very early on. But putting technology in front of him is how he communicated. He was able to speak and adapt. In fact, I felt like it helped his communication.
Yeah.
His reading was struggle. And I'm not anti-iPad phone, you know. It's like, but I also
well, you gotta wait until you're 16 before you can talk on a cell phone.
But I also owned 18 tech store at the time. We had 18 retail store going on 20. And so I was like, how do I keep this away from him? Because he comes to work with me. He likes to fix and take these things apart. But it really helped him out. But I have a question. Because I had goals in my life, Ryan.
Yeah.
And my goals back in the day was to read
Yeah.
or listen to 35 to 40 books a year.
Yeah.
I thought that was extravagant until Dr. Stephen Shepard came into my life. Can you share, sir?
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of us out there. A lot of people are going to be like, how, why, what, and when.
This is the problem with having overachieving friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
it's like, I thought I was the standard amongst the group of people and friends,
right.
You know, going through 35 books, and I'm so excited. But now I feel like I've been challenged.
Yeah.
I don't think I can get to where Dr. Steve Shepard is. But can you share with us, sir? You have 2 kids, 5 grandkids from 1 to 10 years old. You write. You're about to come out with your largest novel just yet. But yet, how many books do you read?
Okay, first of all, you two clearly need to get out more. Okay, you really do.
Well, I think you need to get out more because apparently you're spending too much time with those books behind you. For all we know, you could have written all of those.
Oh no! But you'd be surprised how many people go, "Ooh, where'd you get that background? That's really cool." And I'm like, Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, it's not a virtual background.
Yeah, I mean, George, you know, it's people ask me this all the time, and I mean, look, I have plenty of time. I'm not a speed reader, but I love to read. I average 135 to 140 books a year. I don't live in a book. I mean, I play with my kids and my wife and my grandkids. Play with my kids, they're grown, but you know, my wife and I go out and I've got a full life and I have a job, and it's how I occupy my time. And when I'm on the road, you know, I don't hang out in bars. I sit in my room and read. I mean, that's enjoyable to me. Yeah. But there's a real reason for it beyond simply the fact that I love to read. I really do. I love to read. I'm a writer. It's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And I have on one of my various devices, I have a signature line that says, writing is my craft, reading is my gym. Because the fact is that one of the things that makes you a better writer is to read.
Yeah.
And if you don't read, you will never be able to really explore the full breadth and depth and richness of whatever language it is that you're operating in. And so, I don't want kids to read so they can quote Shakespeare or talk about, Dickens or whatever. I want them to read because it exposes them to the magic of language. There's nothing more powerful than language. And if anybody that doesn't believe that, take a look at our current political brouhaha, right?
Yeah.
The people that can string words together, that really can tell a compelling story, they're the ones people listen to. It's not about the message, it's about how it's delivered.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of the worst examples of our political system have figured that out as well. And that's, somewhat problematic. But anyway, that's the reason for it. It's not something to be impressed with. It's how I spend my time. And it's, my extra time.
I love it because when we were talking about just your perspective around social media and the ills that come around that, right? We can see mental health impacted specifically in young women, teens, men as well. But there's been a lot of writing about that in particular, and so much of our time is just spent reading, but we're reading just these small little perspective sound bites, and we're in this constant recycle of these small little opinions, and we're just reading people's opinions rather than forming our own. And I think that's an interesting perspective around the amount of time that we would have to be able to form our own opinions if we weren't constantly inundated with everybody else's. It feels like that. Like social media is a time suck. It takes from us. It rarely gives anything to us. We might come across a post that makes us feel good because there's a dog that got rescued from in the Philippines, and now the dog's running around with 3 legs and we're happy about it. But at the end of the day, it's taking more from us than it's contributing.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, George, were you about to say something?
No, go ahead.
One of my favorite quotes is from a book that Mark Twain wrote. The book is called Innocents Abroad. It's about Americans in the 19th century traveling for the first time. And you can imagine how well that goes. Anyway, the quote goes like this, and I've used it in quite a few of my books and essays. Here's the quote: "Travel is fatal to bigotry, prejudice, and narrow-mindedness, and most of our people need it sorely on all 3 counts." To me, travel doesn't necessarily involve planes, trains, and automobiles. I travel every time I read a book. It transports me, maybe not geographically, but it transports the way I think. It exposes me to somebody I would never have seen before. It gives me ideas I never would have considered. It allows me to become aware of things that are really important. Do I agree with all of them? No, but at least now I know. I've heard them, right? It gives me the opportunity to hear ideas that, whether I agree with them or not, at least I'm now aware of them and why they are the way they are. And so I think that's part of the driver behind the reading that I do as much as anything else, beyond just the enjoyment. It's that exposure to the world that otherwise I wouldn't have access to. And that's part of why I try to, provide an incentive for more children to read, whether it's listening to books or reading them on a physical book or on a tablet. I don't care. I just want them to read.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, and George's son, Dexter, he's in a school. You'll appreciate this. Tell him about what they do with the kids as far as writing.
So they write 3 different books a year. So they actually go through and have them published for the kids.
Isn't that cool?
We've never really experienced this. And so he wrote his first one back in November. And then his second one was just released in January last month. And so they're able to do those different types of book, informative, writing an informative book. And so the next one he's doing on the Indiana Pacers. about a passion, right?
Yeah.
He's very passionate about Indiana Pacers, loves Miles Turner. But over the course of the basketball season, we go to many basketball games. He collects the books, with the players' names in it. And I had no clue. Huh. But he's already got halfway done with his book. They just started last week, but he's already been cutting and pasting out their pictures.
Oh, cool.
Putting them, so he's already got his pre-book. Yeah. And it's about 10 to 20 pages, very short book, but for third graders, to get into the habit of writing their thoughts. And Dexter, he's not a very talker about his emotions, but he'll write it. And that's what I love. Like, communication is communication, whatever your level is. Some people
of the best verbal, writers are quiet.
Some people are writers. And so he's been writing, that book on top of, he wants to write his story. I'm like, son, you're only 9.
No, let him keep
going. He has a story.
Yeah, he has a story. He's got some catching up to do to Steve over here.
He has a story. And Dr. Shepard, I want to lead to this because one of the things that I read, obviously, the topic of our conversation today was exploring those blind spots in business and growth. Mm-hmm. But you shared one quote that stuck out, and I really love that, Mark Twain. But you also had a quote that you really speak on a lot. And I want to just kind of start our conversation, if we can, with this quote, because it's something that I feel like Ryan and our hearts is truly behind this statement about don't just make a living, make a difference. Mm-hmm. Behind culture good and how we desire to champion leaders, people in general, especially in the workplace with their culture, that quote means so much to me. When I saw that, I'm like, that's a lifestyle. That's not a quote. That's a lifestyle. You either live in it or it's a lie. Yeah. Can you share why that quote and where that quote came from you and why it means so much for you?
I sure can. My the first major chunks of my career, the first 20 years, I was in the telecom industry specifically. I spent 11 years in the phone company in California. That's where I got my foundational knowledge. And then I quit and went to a consulting firm here in Vermont. I was with them for 10 years. And between the two of them, I developed a really good, discrete understanding of telecom and IT and so on. And then in 2000, I left to start my own company. And one of the very first, because I wanted to do more international work and I wanted to do more of this work that I described earlier, I was really growing tired of teaching people how, wireless networks work and who cares? Anyway, I got an opportunity to teach a program, a one-day course for the World Bank in Washington, D.C. And the timing was such, you'll understand what the timing was. The topic was basically how the internet works. Mm. And this is back in the days when people actually cared. So it was kind of an interesting opportunity. So I'm in this room, and it was going to be a satellite broadcast to about 20 people in 4 countries, and it was all in sub-Saharan Africa. Mm. So I'm doing my thing, and it's an all-day deal. And I'm, this is the introduction, where it came from, the 4 nodes, all that early history stuff. We took a break, and the director came over to me and said, I need to let you know that we don't have 40 people. And I said, that's okay. I understand. I mean, people always drop off. He said, no, you don't understand. I said, what? He said, we have 1,200 people.
Oh, wow.
And they're in about 30 countries. And I went, awesome. I mean, doesn't matter to me. I'm looking at one camera, bring them on.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So we got through the whole day, and I did the session, and it went really well, and had great interaction with the people. And about 3 weeks later, about 2 weeks later, I get an email from a guy. His name was, I still remember it like it was yesterday. His name was Edwin Ngorongo. And Edwin lived in Kenya. And he said, I want to start an online business. This is before, the idea, Amazon at that time sold books. That was it. This is a long time ago. And he said, can you help me? And I said, well, I can guide you in the setup. I'm not that kind of techie, but I'll, whatever I can do for you, I will. So I did. We worked together for about 2 or 3 months. I worked pretty intensely with him. And then it, how it is, it tapers off over a period of time. And then, our contact got less and less and less. And then it just naturally kind of faded away. About a year went by. It's now 2001. And I get a letter from Ed. I'm looking at it. It's right there on the wall. And basically what he said was, and by the way, this is a typed on a typewriter letter. Okay. It's courier, misshaped letters, crooked. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I framed it and stuck it on the wall. And basically it says, I want to thank you for helping me start my internet business in Kenya. He said it wasn't easy, but I was able to get it set up with your help, and we have a website now. And he said, with your help, I'm actually making money. And he went on to explain for about a paragraph what he's doing. And he ended with this line. He said something like, anyway, I want to thank you again. Because of your help, my family is eating well and my children are smiling. God bless you and the internet. Asante sana, Rafiki Wako, Edwin. Thank you very much, your friend Edwin. And it hit me like a brick in the side of the head.
Yeah.
That, like my job is like to teach technology. Right. And that day I realized that wasn't my job.
Right.
That day I made a difference. It wasn't just making a living. And I don't say that to try to be like self-serving. I'm really serious about that. That day, something fundamental shifted, and I never went back from that day forward. Every book I wrote about technology, every session I taught, every single thing. Yeah, there may have been tech involved in it, but I never once again taught a session that didn't have an element of, now let me tell you why you care.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why it matters.
I love this stuff, man. This is your why.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is like, that's that living beyond a job or a career, really discovering a sense of calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, just having that bring your soul to work and craft your passion into what you do and make an impact through that. I love it. Making a difference through your work is a tremendous motivator to continuing to do that work, because when you feel like you're just spinning your wheels and you're constantly putting contribution out there, but it's our impact that gives us something so much more profound even to us. Yeah. Because that gives us, those are those indicators or a moment that the universe, the world speaks to us and says, right there, that's what you're supposed to be doing.
That's exactly right.
It's like undeniable where if you're just working with technology, it's like, okay, what technology, but once you hone in on how does this make an impact and a difference, then you're able to really get focused in life and say, this is the direction I see that my life is taking, that I can actually do something that has some meaning here. And that, I think everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really good segue into your latest book. And I just want to jump into it. Is that cool?
Go for it.
Yeah. So the leadership according to the elephant's child, right? So this satiable curiosity that will save us from ourselves. That's what I was talking about. We're about to like create enough technology where we no longer have to exist anymore, right?
Might be a little optimistic on my part, but
so what are we saving ourselves from?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think the biggest thing is complacency. The message that I've always used, and now that I've become, well, let me put it this way. Now that I've lost my blind spot to blind spots, I see it everywhere, and literally everywhere. I think the key here is this. We have an annoying tendency as a species to search for the easy button. And this is life. There's no easy button. I mean, life is messy. It's designed and supposed to be messy. But when we start to see ourselves moving into the world of work, and I extend that to include the fact that the reason we work is to have an impact on those around us that we love and care about. I mean, that's why we do it. It's not about making money. Yeah, that's a transactional element of it, but it's about making a difference in the world. That's why we do this stuff.
Yeah.
But what I find is that this tendency to miss the important things occasionally, this tendency to not see what really matters, those are blind spots. And the thing about blind spots is we all have them. Everybody has them. Every company has them. It's just a natural part of life. The problem is they're blind spots, which means we can't see them until somebody else points them out to us. And so I think the danger here, and I'll get to the elephant's child thing here in a second.
Yeah.
The real danger here is that if we allow blind spots to persist, if we don't do something deliberate, and I use that word a lot because I think it's a critical word today. If we don't make a deliberate effort to say, I got to find my blind spots and take care of them, then what happens is we lapse into complacency. And what that really means is that we worship the status quo. Good enough is good enough. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've all heard those phrases, right? And the problem is that worship of the status quo does indeed lead to complacency. And the minute you become complacent, what you're really saying is everything's okay. And I've suddenly become blind to the fact that it probably isn't. In business, you got competitors out there, and if they're not worshiping the status quo, if they're making one tiny little effort to be better than you, you're moving backwards and they're moving forward, and you're done. You're toast at that point. So the whole point of this conversation about blind spots is that the only way we can find them is to actually trust the people around us to help us point them out.
Yeah.
And we should all do that. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. It's not easy for somebody to come in and say, you asked for this, and I just got to tell you that there's something you're missing, and it's creating some real issues. And if we choose to just stick our head in the sand and say, it'll go away. No, you'll go away along with the company that you work for.
Right.
And who wants that? I mean, that's really bad. So I'll bring in the elephant's child just really quickly. When I was a kid, my parents actually read to me from this book.
Yeah.
Like this is, you notice there's no spine is fallen off. This thing is older than I am.
Yeah.
Which puts it somewhere in the Jurassic age, I think.
A literal book from the jungle
Absolutely,
book.
man. It's a collection of short stories that Rudyard Kipling actually put together for his daughter, Josephine. When she was little, he was posted by the British Empire, if you will, to India as part of the colonial world. Yeah. And Kipling, Rudyard, as a little boy, grew up in this sort of feral childhood, running around the streets of Bombay, just kind of making his own course, living, you could in those days, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then when he was about 6 years old, his parents sent him back to England, cold, wintry, wet, nasty England, to go to school. And so what really happened was he had to leave behind this carefree, fun, adventurous childhood in the jungles of India. And suddenly now he's in this cold, dreary, basically boarding school with these pretty mean people. And I think the whole point of the stories was to one level an escape for him.
Yeah.
And I actually think that Mowgli, which of course is one of his most famous characters from the Jungle Book.
Sure.
I think Mowgli is actually Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah.
I think it's him pining away for the world that he was forced to leave behind. Anyway, when he finally got married and had children, he made these stories up for his daughter Josephine, and he would tell them to her at night as bedtime stories. The problem was that she was apparently very literal. She sounds kind of like Dexter a little bit here, because basically you'll notice the book is actually called the Just So stories, because what would happen is he'd tell a story. And then she'd say the next day, tell me the elephant one again. And he'd start to tell it, and she'd go, nope, no. That's not how you told it last night. You need to tell it with this piece. You've got to tell it just so. So he was forced to go back and go, because he never wrote them down until much later. One of the stories is called The Elephant's Child, or How the Elephant Got His Trunk. And it's basically about this little elephant that lives in South Africa, what is now South Africa, who was routinely beaten and bullied by his family every time he asked a question, because they didn't like to look stupid, because they didn't know the answer.
Right.
And one day he asked the question, what does the crocodile have for dinner? Which is sort of like, that's the crocodile in that part of the world is like, it's like, he who must not be named. You don't talk about that animal because they eat you.
Right. Here be dragons.
Here be dragons. and they wouldn't answer him. And in fact, they beat him pretty roundly. And he said, okay, fine, I'm going to go find out for myself. And he took off, and he ended up somewhere in the northern part, what is now Limpopo province, which is the border between South Africa and Botswana. And he went to the river there, the Limpopo River, and he, in fact, found a crocodile. And he said, "Can you tell me what you have for dinner?" And the crocodile said, "Well, sure, just come a little closer. Well, we know this isn't going to end well, right?" and the thing I haven't mentioned is that in those days, elephants didn't have a trunk. As Kipling described it, they had a short little bulbous black nose that looked like a boot. Well, of course, the crocodile grabs him by the nose and proceeds to pull him into the river to demonstrate what he has for dinner. And there was a python sitting on the bank that took pity on the elephant's child, wrapped himself around a tree, wrapped his other end around the elephant's back legs, and began to pull against the crocodile. And they had this tug of war. And of course, the elephant child's nose began to stretch. Gotcha. This is how the crocodile, this is how the elephant got his trunk. So the crocodile gives up. The elephant rolls back over, falls over, sticks his trunk in the water to the cold water of the river and packs it with mud. And the python, who, by the way, is serving as his equivalent of Obi-Wan Kenobi, says to him, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm waiting for my nose to shrink." And he says, "That ain't going to happen."
Right. You're stuck with that long nose now.
You're stuck with it. And the elephant child goes, "But look at me. I'm disfigured. I'm ugly. This is horrible." And the python says, "Some people don't know a good thing when they see it." Mm. And just at that moment, a wasp or a fly stings the elephant on the back. And without even thinking, he takes his trunk and he goes whap, and he kills the fly. And he goes, "Hey,
this isn't so bad.
This isn't so bad." And so that was a blind spot. He had what he perceived as a physical disability, with actually realizing it wasn't at all. It actually was, an advantage. So ultimately, the story ends is as only Kipling could tell it. The crocodile, the python says to him, "You've told me a little bit about your life, being, beaten and hit and bullied your whole life as a kid. And I have to believe you probably want to go beat somebody up about now, don't you?" And he says, "Yeah, I would actually." He says, "Well, why don't you go do that?" So he heads back to his family, and his first encounter is with his uncle, the baboon, who says to him, "Where have you been?" And he said, "Well, I've been to the river to ask the crocodile what he has for dinner." And he says, "What happened to your nose?" And he said, "Oh, it's a gift from the crocodile. He gave it to me to keep."
Yeah.
And the baboon says, "Well, it's quite ugly." And the elephant child says, "Yes, but it's quite useful." And he picks him up and throws him into a hornet's nest. And
it's quite useful.
Very, very useful. And so what ends up happening, of course, is that the elephant child becomes aware of these blind spots that he has. And as I was reading this book to my grandchild, one of my grandchildren, I can't remember now, for the 37th time, it hit me like, this is an exercise in blind spots. That's what this story is about.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a leadership book, the one you referred to, around this children's story, this very erudite, insightful, wise story, because it works, and have now delivered multiple keynotes about it and given, workshops based on it and the whole
TED Talk. You've got a TED Talk out there.
Yeah, there's a TED Talk out there now. Yeah, they got a hold of me after the book came out saying, "Hey, we'd like you to come talk about that." And, it's a fun topic, and it's not that hard to overcome blind spots if you're willing to shut up and listen.
That is a problem with most leaders.
It is.
Yeah, you think about it as well, Ryan. We always ask ourselves, how can leaders create an environment where employees feel comfortable, vulnerable enough to bring up potential blind spots? Because a lot of the times, and this is happening to us on the retail side, where as an owner operator, you have a mindset on how to drive the business and get it to the next level. And you forget what it's like to be on the front line, and you implement from the top, not reflecting with those who are on the bottom.
The actual ground level people doing the frontline work. Yeah. We've seen all the time, like technology. Yeah. Let's push new technology down, a whole new POS system, and everybody, it just throws the entire company into disarray. But that's
So there has to be strategies and methods. I want to ask you, Dr. Shepard, when it comes to implementing and really encouraging. When I think about this story that you shared, and I'm over here thinking as you're talking, as one of your potential grandkids or maybe son, I'm thinking to myself, man, this book for me means slow down, George. Let's self-reflect. Let's figure out who you are now, right? Because we're ever changing. We experience life, we adapt. Sometimes we feel trapped,
Yeah.
right? We go through things, and just like this elephant, I'm thinking, man, self-reflection.
Knowing
who are you now?
Are, yeah.
And where are you going?
Knowing who you are before your nose gets stretched.
Yeah.
It's really important too, right? Because who you are is still who you are with just a longer nose too, right? Like at to your point, George, is we're evolving.
Yeah.
And as we're learning, as we're growing, as we're gaining wisdom from others, like this multicolored serpent or whatever it was, right? Like your typical, gaining wisdom from others that have kind of been there and done that and experienced it. And but a lot of times, to your point, like those that are in charge have tremendous blind spots, and it really impacts their business, and everybody just goes around and facilitates their blind spots.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yes. And maybe both of y'all, I'll start with you, Dr. Stephen. What's one strategy or key point out there that you can give to those that are listening to us when it comes to these blind spots? What's a strategy or a method that could be implemented? And let's have fun with it. Explain it in such an easy, simple way as if you're talking to your grandchildren.
Yeah.
I can do that, but actually they're far smarter than I am, so I'd have to ramp up just a touch.
Yeah, there you go. Raise the bar.
I think that blind spots can be eliminated, and I mean literally eliminated if you go so far as to culturally engender your people to ask 5 really simple questions.
All right.
And ask them all the time. And it's really simple. It really is. It's so you imagine that you bring somebody in and you say to them, I want your help on this because I think I have blind spots and I want to identify them so I can deal with them. And some of them may be inconsequential, but some of them may not be. Some of them may be serious issues. And I want to make sure I'm dealing, like, the new point of sale system that's going to clearly make everything better if we bring it in from the top and push it down. And then no one goes to check, right?
Yeah.
So 5 simple questions. So let me ask you this, and I want honest answers. What do I do well? Help me understand what I do well. We'll start with that one because it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
The second one is, what do I do that could be done better? Help me understand one thing, just one, that I could do better. Number 3 is when you start to look at sort of the people, right? And so on, you say, what am I doing that by all rights someone else ought to do? And I think this is a real issue because in businesses, oftentimes what happens is leaders are leaders because they've been given the title, but mentally they're still managers. They want to get their hands dirty because it's easy. They can see the results at the end of the day. Leadership is risky and painful and uncomfortable. No one wants to do that.
Right.
So what they'll end up doing is they'll say, he's not doing that very well, so I'm just going to start doing it. I'll take it off his plate. He's got too much to do. And what you're really doing is you're sending a message to that person that you're not really up to the task, so I got this, right? And then they wonder why employee morale is, circling the drain. Number 2, there's the sort of the antithesis of that one, which is what should I be doing that has been foisted onto someone else? Okay. And then the 5th one is my favorite. If you could wave your Hermione Granger magic wand and tap this company or me on the head, what is the one thing you would change? And you have to, George, you made the point earlier, I think it's really critical. You've got to create a culture where people understand that it's okay to answer these questions honestly.
Yeah.
And the only way that happens is if they ask the questions and the person that is hearing the answer responds, meaning they actually do something. Because all too often what happens is, we put into place, we bring in the consultants that, do the 360-degree stuff, and we collect all this input. And then what happens, it gets bound into a binder and put up there on the shelf with all the other binders, never to be seen or heard from again. And then people go, yeah, well, that wasn't a good use of my time.
Yeah, or it didn't work. We tried consultants, or we tried to do that survey and nothing happened. Well, nothing happened because you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything with it.
Yeah. And George, you know what? I want to share a quick anecdote with you. I did a lot of work for a company that had a truly, truly charismatic leader, founder of the organization. This guy was in his late 70s, the board of directors of the company actually asked me to write his biography as a gift to him when he retired. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And I got to spend a couple of days with this guy in the boardroom, just talking about his life and his philosophy and so on. And I want to tell you a funny story. He said, I've been with this company since 1956. He said, I built it. And he said, never once, not one time have I ever eaten lunch in the executive dining room. And I said, why? Because the food's good there.
Yeah, right.
He said, nope. Every day I grabbed a tray and went through the line like everybody else and filled up my food. And then I went looking for a table that had an empty chair. And I asked if it would be okay if I sat with them. And of course, after the initial, that's the CEO, what did we do wrong, was passed.
Right.
It just lapsed into normal conversation, and people began to become accustomed to this guy just hanging out. And I said, why'd you do that? And he went like this. He pointed up into officer country. He said, got this great look on his face. He said, you think they know what's going on in this company? I don't have a clue. I ate down with everybody else because those are the people that actually know what's going on in the company. They're the ones I want to hear from.
Yeah.
And so, George, to your question, kind of a long-winded answer, that's the answer. That's the implementable piece. Get off your butt and go talk to people. Go sit next to somebody who's using the new point of sale system and see what their frustrations are, because it's your fault and maybe you can fix it. Right. I mean, it's like, well, duh, except that will duh part is a blind spot and people don't see it. I spent all this money. How could it possibly not be good? Well, let me show you.
Yeah. That's like the difference. Like you always talk about that quote about knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is what? Don't put it on a salad, right?
Don't put it on a fruit salad.
or on a fruit salad. Yeah, not a salad, but fruit salad. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, that's the idea, right? Is like just because you have knowledge and you have that skill and you have position and title, it doesn't always mean. I mean, the wisdom is in George, to your point, in the implementation. The wisdom is in like, how does this actually work?
Right.
Like if I have blind spots as a leader, Dr. Shepard, we always talk about like checking in with each team member every quarter, at least. Obviously we're checking in all the time, but a specific designed, programmed check-in that we call our SVP, that we're going over the role, strengths, values, and purpose. But as a leader, those 5 questions, we need to implement that into that check-in process. So quarterly, as a leader, I'm going to each one of my team members and I'm curating that culture. I'm creating that experience and I'm doing it intentionally. And I'm doing it not just I'm actually going in that direction. I'm utilizing those 5 questions in a way that can be used, where we're not just on this podcast saying, here's some good questions to ask someone. But what if you went with each team member every quarter and you checked in with them about their role, their strengths, values, and purpose, but also your role in their life, to your point, right? Those 5 questions are huge. As you were saying them, I was just thinking those are great questions to add into our quarterly check-in process, man.
Yeah. Grab them. Yeah. The place where it always falls apart, though, is typically when it gets, George, you said this earlier in kind of a different way, but when it gets to leadership, because what do they do with it? Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Right. They put it up on the shelf. The example I use a lot, I call it the goat trail theory. Have you ever been to a business park? Think about the last time you visited a big campus or a business park, right? Beautiful buildings, landscape, little hills, maybe there's a lake over there if it's big enough. And they've poured these beautiful concrete pathways between the buildings and so on. But if you look closely, you'll notice that cutting across the grass are these goat trails. You ever notice that? They're like where people have taken a shortcut to get to the other building, because doing this to get to the building is too far. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Yeah. I maintain that what they ought to do, build the buildings, put in the grass, and then wait 6 weeks and pave the goat trails.
So good.
I mean, seriously,
That's got to be a book.
And people will notice it. Right?
Called Goat Trails. Goat Trails would be a cool book. I'm not trying to, you've got the ideas. I'm not writing for you, but you should write a book on goat trails. That is an interesting concept.
I'll co-write it with you.
Yeah, that is a really, really fascinating concept, because what you're doing is you're learning together.
Yeah.
It's a true sense of community. It's very equivalent to many times where a company just goes to the CEO and says, what's our values? And they say, well, here's the 5 I think they should be. And then they put them on a wall, and then everybody walks by, and that's supposed to be everyone's values, where really values are who we are and how we live on a day-to-day. It's goat trails we take, not the pre-paved ideas, these aspirational statements that companies give us that we're supposed to walk on those paths. It's on the goat trails that you find out people's value.
That's exactly. I call that slogan leadership, right?
Slogan leadership.
Yeah. You walk into the business, and they've got the famous picture of the person silhouetted against the sunset, standing on top of the mountain, going like this, and it says, determination at the bottom. That's slogan leadership, right? I like the one that shows, the very famous picture. You've all seen the picture of the grizzly bear standing with his mouth open. It's a photograph by Tom Mengelson, and the salmon is right here. He's jumping right into or appears to be jumping right into the bear's mouth. And that's the poster. And the caption at the bottom says, sometimes the journey of 1,000 steps ends very badly.
Yeah. I follow, you're not a big social media person, but I follow something called disappointing affirmations. And it's like that. It's like the picture of the mountain and everything. Yesterday's was, you should stop anything that's not serving you. Oh. Like your personality. It sucks. I was like, yeah, the first part's always true of the affirmation. Stop anything that's not serving you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that, and it becomes like that, right? Our values, the purpose of our business, the way that we're wanting to grow together. I love the idea of being able to get the input and to curate the experiences and the environments where people do feel safe showing up to work, and they do feel that they can be vulnerable, and that there's that level of trust. I think those 5 questions, I'm asked all the time. Companies are asking both George and I to come in, and the topic of building trust is such a key component to what they are trying to figure. How do we build trust? How do we build trust? How do we build trust?
It has to
really
be.
What they're asking is, how do we build relationship?
Yeah.
Because I can't trust you if I don't have relationship with you.
You can't lead me if you don't have a relationship as well.
Yeah, I can't lead someone without a good relationship. Yeah. I can have authority over you.
Yeah.
And I can dictate and direct your actions, but I can't lead you unless we have relationship.
That's right.
And I think that's the continuance of everything that's been said here, is that when we're identifying those blind spots, we're creating that relationship. I think that ongoing knowledge, right, learning and development, we see that in a lot of our clients in workshops and it goes back to the RSVP.
Yeah.
That RSVP is all about, I trust you enough to sit down with you and be vulnerable with you as my leader to say, my roles change.
Yeah.
Right. My strengths are, because the moment I share more strengths, the more I'm probably going to have to do. Do I trust you enough to value me for who I am without putting more on me? Right. And so that key to relationship and really developing as a leader, developing those who are trusting you to lead and not force.
Yeah.
Right. Lead me to help grow individually. That growth will then impact the business in a positive way. But I trust you enough to lead me, not dictate me.
Well, you have to feel like this is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when business leadership, when it's happening to you, that's management, that's authority, that's position, that's title. When it's happening for you, that's leadership. Because leaders, Steve, you talked about before, you and I've talked about your definition of leadership, and just, you brought it up earlier, and that is having a vision beyond the status quo, being able to see what others may not see, be able to hear, smell, sense, feel what others may not feel to be able to say, this is a direction we're going, and inspire others to join us in doing that. You know, a mentor mindset, if you call yourself a leader and you look back and no one's following you, you're just taking a walk. Yeah. You're not leading anything. You know, leadership is all about the community that you grow and you build. And I love your concepts of leadership, because it really does rehumanize the experience, specifically in the workplace, which during the pandemic, I think, or as you called it, the zombie apocalypse, which has certainly felt that way. I think this conversation became more and more a part of everyone's perspective around work, in terms of saying, I need to care for myself. I think a lot of our blind spots were exposed during the pandemic too. Like when we can get exposed by asking those questions, and we can also just have blind spots by seeing that what we've been doing doesn't work. If what we're doing doesn't work at some level and we can't figure out why it's not working, we have a blind spot somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, to your point, what am I doing that I need to do? Like, what am I not doing that I need to do more of? Or whatever the questions that need to be, allow me to have some understanding of where I'm at. So at the end, right. At the end of this, with the elephants, with the elephant, in terms of the end of this story, how then does it play out for the elephant? Right. I mean, we heard about him throwing his uncle into the beehive, which I'm sure all of us have an uncle we'd like to do that with. It's and but what ends up happening? I mean, what's the discovery for the elephant?
The discovery for the elephant's child is essentially done at that point. The elephant's child has now kind of realized a new lease on life because of what he's come to understand. But the rest of his family says, "Wow, I think maybe we need to go to the river." You know, he got something valuable on that journey. Maybe we need to take the same journey. And you know, it's funny. Back in the 80s, when everybody still lived in cubicle land, I used to go around and look for the best office humor that people had thumbtacked up onto their cubicle walls, and I'd steal it and copy it. I have a folder. It's got to be this thick of those jokes. And one of them, which I go back to pretty often, and it fits nicely into this narrative, says, you know, where are they? Which way? No, wait, I got to get this right. Where are they? Which way did they go? I have to find them. I'm their leader.
I'm writing that down for sure.
Therein lies the problem, right?
Yeah.
That sign you've got on the wall behind you there, I think it in and of itself, and I mean this in a positive way, is a blind spot for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I think people will read that and, you know, ching, file it away. But do they ever stop and really think about it? Like, why do you want to, you know, bring your soul to work? And one of the reasons is because when you bring your soul to work, it ceases to be work. When you bring your soul to work, you're still doing a job. There's a transactional element that's important to get paid, to move the mission of the organization forward. But missions are really transactional. They're tactical. They're not strategic. If you want to get to that why question that you both talk about all the time, the reason you bring your soul to work is because it helps to turn the mission of the organization from something that is transactional into something that is transformational.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it's no longer about manufacturing widgets. It's about manufacturing widgets to achieve some higher goal. But how many organizations ever take the time or initiate the effort or push their people to think that way and to live it out? I mean, how many leaders do we know that lead that way? I think in all my career, I can think of two that truly did it right. I mean, they truly understood what it meant to be a leader.
Yeah.
And, you know, people say, oh, you can learn to be a leader, or there are natural born leaders, and all that nonsense. Forget all that.
Right.
Think about leaders as the only reason they're a leader is because people are following them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, to your point, they're just taking a walk.
Yeah.
So what is it? This is rhetorical, but what is that essence that causes people to say, I'm following that person? And I think it boils down to one very simple thing, and that is that true leaders, no matter what the industry, no matter where they live, no matter where in the world they are. It has nothing to do with income or anything like that. It's all about the ability to paint a picture of a better status quo than the one you have today.
Yeah.
And share it and enroll people to help you achieve it. That's what good leaders do. This is not my vision. It's our vision. And let me show you why. Let me paint you a picture of what it looks like. You want to come along? If you can do that, then people will help you achieve the vision. Otherwise, it becomes this.
Yeah.
It's so easy to worship the status quo. Why would I change? It's cold out there. I don't want to change. I'm comfortable here. That's risky. Yeah, but let me show you what lies on the other side. Let me, This is the part that they miss.
It goes to the concept that leaders don't choose their followers, followers choose their leaders.
Ooh, I like that.
You think about, like, if I choose a leader, that's going to get me to where I want to get, right? That gets me out of my status quo. The reason I follow myself, the reason I choose a leader is because I know they're further along than I am, or they have insight that I might not have, or they have a perspective that advances me. At the end of the day, I don't choose leaders just so that leader becomes a better leader, or makes more money. It's about how can that leader benefit me and get me out of my status quo.
So good. It's great. I got one last question for you, Dr. Stephen. It's more so speaking to the heart and the soul of those people. I'm all about, making sure our audience walks away with something. But I want to make sure that and ask you what's on your heart when it comes to sharing. Keynote speaker, you're writing so many books, you're reading so many books and getting this. What's something that you can give to the audience today? Because I know one of your desires is to bring impact and make at least one person smile each day. What's something that you have on your heart that you can share with the audience today that would help them and impact them on the topic, maybe of blind spots or even growth and success in their business or in their workplace?
Sure. And I can actually do, this is very current, actually, and really intriguing. I just published a podcast a couple of days ago in my series, and it was an interview with 3 people about an organization called the Human Library Project. It's one of the most extraordinary things I've ever run into in my life. So I interviewed the founder of the Human Library Project. I interviewed the woman who runs the New York City branch of the Human Library Project, and I interviewed one of their books. So I want you to imagine a library where instead of books on the shelves, you've got people on the shelves.
Interesting.
Not literally, of course, but I mean, so you walk in and you say, you know what I've always wanted to understand? I've always wanted to understand what it's like to be schizophrenic or homeless or African-American or divorced or poor or an author or somebody who's comfortable public speaking or someone who's perhaps disabled in another way. They're blind or they can't hear. And they say, hang tight, I've got a book for you. And they go away and they grab the person and they bring them back and they introduce you to this person. And you've got half an hour to ask them any question you want.
That's cool.
Nothing is off limits. And if at the end of the 30 minutes, you both agree that this is going well and no one else wants to check out the book, you can extend it by another 15 minutes or longer. The mantra of this organization is unjudge someone. Now, I want you to set that aside for a second. I just finished a book written by a guy who I also interviewed for the podcast. The book is called The Power of Strangers. And essentially what it says is that there really are no strangers unless you choose them to be so. So the next time you're out walking along and you see somebody that you don't know, stop and talk to them. But I mean, talk to them. We all go through the, what's it called? It's like a script, right? You walk into the coffee shop. This is one the author uses. You walk into a coffee shop. Hi, the barista says, how you doing? I'm fine. What can I get you? Double latte, whatever. Okay, that's a script. There's no thinking, feeling, emotion behind that. He says, here's what I do. I walk into the coffee shop and the guy says, how are you? I say, today, I'm a 7.5. What are you? On a scale of 10? Yeah. He says, I'm a 9, man. So what do I have to do to get to 9? What did you do differently that got, and suddenly a conversation has started. And now you're going to get behind the scenes of this facade that has typically characterized the relationship. I think those two things, unjudge someone by opening your mind and your heart and all rational thought to say, I don't really know you. Who are you? What drives you? And one of the things about the human library, you don't have to like the person. I mean, they may live a lifestyle that you disagree with. That's fine. But at least you understand why they live the lifestyle they do. So I think that's those two things in your personal life, in your business life. Those, for me, one of the greatest gifts I've been given in the last probably 10 years. Those two things.
Unjudge someone. I love that because it goes back to your idea of travel. That when you travel, it can eliminate biases. It can eliminate perspectives that are so narrow-minded. And I think when we listen to people's stories, to your point, you stated earlier that you travel just by reading books. And I think it's really important that we also travel when we hear people's story because we're reading their book.
Right.
We're given the opportunity to travel with that person back to 1983, or back to 1976 when I was born and you were married. I hate to add that toward the end of the show.
They didn't get married to 81.
But it ties in. There's a great quote that says, bigotry is ignorance thinly disguised as conviction. And it's the ignorance piece that is so important there, right? Because you know what? That is an illness that can be treated.
Ignorance is an illness that can be treated. You heard it first here. It is. Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I think there's some people, I think they was born stupid, man.
Well,
they had to be born stupid. I'm totally kidding, of course. I'm totally joking, obviously. But it's this is great. This is great. I'm really excited about just the ideas that you have being able to be implemented more and more in the everyday. I know our audience is really open to a lot, to George's point, to like, okay, now how do we do this? We have people that listen to podcasts that say, I was on the side of the highway taking notes because I couldn't take notes while I was driving. And I'm sure this is one of those moments for a lot of people. The 5 questions is huge. The concepts that you're bringing up now in terms of unjudging, I think is just, I think it's needed more and more. Your message and your mission to continue to make the difference. And one of the things, I know you didn't do this for the notoriety or anything else, but your contribution toward My Wife Qatar's app Exhale, the nature sounds that you were able to contribute toward that. And that's another big part of what you do, traveling and recording just the sounds of nature and the sounds of the earth, the sounds of water moving. And I'm just fascinating by all of that, and just your contribution toward Exhale and toward what she's doing. And just this last weekend, her winning a pitch competition. And, one of the things that she brings up is there's soothing sounds in her app. And that was from you. So I just wanted to say thank you.
You're very welcome. And so well-deserved, by the way. I mean, she's rocked it on that app. It's fabulous.
Thank you. She's done a good job. George, you got anything else?
No, as people are listening, I'm thinking of, there's so much. I don't go back and listen to our podcast much, but this is one of the ones that I definitely will. I appreciate you, Dr. Stephen Shepard, for sharing. And just want to remind people there's no perfection, right? We talk about the perfect-ish culture. When it comes to, the perfect business, it's the perfect-ish. There's no perfect where there's humanity. And if it is, don't invite me because I'll mess it up. But in this pursuit, really of uncovering these blind spots, start with yourself. I just want to encourage people to self-reflect when it comes to, looking back. And finding where to start. I think there's inspiration and a power and an empowerment for us as individuals to really embrace those things. If there's a word of the day, I think a lot of what Dr. Stephen has shared, for me, I find vulnerability. There's a lot of different vulnerability in certain areas. I'm very vulnerable at home with my child and my wife, but at work, the vulnerability level may be different. And it depends who I'm with, right? And so, exploring that vulnerability at the pond where there may be a crocodile.
Yeah.
Like being vulnerable. And part of that vulnerability also means you may get hurt.
Yeah.
You may come out with a longer nose.
Well, and I think that's part of traveling too, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between being in the gift shop and actually going up on the mountain.
Yeah.
And you can buy the postcard in the gift shop, but you can't get the same feeling unless you go and you start to ascend.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of that as well. For me, the word, yours is vulnerability, mine is travel. I think that's going to come up in me over this week, just like, how am I traveling well today?
Yeah.
How am I traveling when I'm talking to this person at the coffee shop? How am I traveling with this person? Instead of just we're in like a quick convo, but how am I going to travel? How am I going to learn and listen and grow as a leader in that way? So
we discover our true essence of ourselves.
Yeah.
When we find ourselves in those vulnerable moments.
Yeah.
Find ourselves traveling.
You literally will find yourself on the side of a mountain. You will not find yourself in a gift shop.
Dr. Steve, one last word that you have for the audience as we sign out here?
A word of optimism. This is a great topic. I mean, what you have contributed to this effort overall, what we all believe in. I actually think a lot more people believe the way we do than the media would lead us to believe or attempt to lead us to believe. I tend to be a pretty optimistic person as a rule, but a lot of that optimism is tempered by fact. I mean, I do a lot of research on this, and I feel pretty good about the world. I think we're actually in a place where people want to do better. People want us to see their better selves. They want to improve the way they engage and lead and think and behave. And that gives me hope.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Ending with the message of hope and positivity. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Stephen Shepard. It was really, really great to have you on. I'm glad we have been able to grow in our friendship over the years.
As am I.
It's been great. Every time I talk to you, it's always something different. You're always like, oh, I went to this building and they turned the whole thing into a garden and it's 60 stories high. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to hang out with you and travel with you and see all that you see and travel. And I can do that as I read your book. So where can people get in touch with you and learn more about you and find your books and all that?
Probably the best place is the website, which is just stephen-shepard.com.
Right. Awesome. That's great.
We'll throw that in the chat for those who are watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah.
We'll throw those in the chat as well. You can also follow Culture Good. We appreciate Culture Good for power this podcast. You can find all the information on there following this episode.
Yeah. All right. So as always, thank you for joining us. Next week, we have my wife, Katara, jumping on with us to talk about her winning the NBA Pitch Foundation competition during the All-Star weekend. It was really great. And we'll see you all back next week on Champion Your Culture. Thank you for tuning in to Champion Your Culture. We hope today's episode has sparked new ideas and inspiration for your journey in leadership and cultural development.
Building a culture good is a collective effort. If you found value in conversations today, please subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on your favorite platform and share this episode with your friends and colleagues.
Your support helps us reach more people and spread the message of impactful leadership and positive cultural change. Don't forget to visit cultureofgood.com to explore how you can become a certified culture champion.
Every week, we're here to bring you insights and strategies that matter. So join us again for more empowering discussions. Let's continue to champion a culture of purpose and passion together.
Until next time, keep leading with heart and let's make a positive difference in the world. And we'll see you next week on Champion Your Culture.